This is the Day in the Life of a Venture for America Fellow and Alum webinar. Thank you all for joining today. If you're here, that's because you all advanced the essay stage of the application for our class of 2020. So congratulations on making it to the next stage. The purpose of this webinar really is to prepare you all to write stellar essays and pitches and show us who you really are in your essays. I'm going to share my screen so that you can all see a short deck that I've prepared for everyone, but most of the time will be for our fellows to speak and for you to ask any questions that you might have as well about VFA. So could someone give me a thumbs up if they can see, or put it in the chat if they can see my screen? Perfect. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to start with some introductions. So if you don't know who I am already, my name is Winston Law. I was born and raised in Seattle, but went to college in Vermont. I went to Middlebury College, where I studied geography and French. After I graduated from Middlebury, I became a Venture for America Fellow, applied to different jobs through the VFA match process, and ended up coming to Detroit, where I still live, to work at a real estate tech company that was founded by former VFA fellows as well. After my fellowship ended, I joined the Venture for America team, where today I work as a recruiter as a talent manager. So I'm going to also kick it off to both Daisy and Mapate, who are our fellows joining the call today, for them to introduce themselves as well. So Daisy, if you go first, that would be great.
Yeah, hey, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, my name is Daisy. I graduated from Barnard College in 2018, and I am a fellow in Birmingham. I work as a business analyst at an organization called the Alabama Capital Network. We're an angel investment group that seeks to support startups here in Birmingham and across the state of Alabama. And yeah, I'm excited to be a Venture for America Fellow. I've been one for a year, and I'm excited to be starting my second year as one.
Yay, thanks for being on, Daisy.
Of course.
All right, and next we have Mapate. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm in. Winston, thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Mapate Diop. I'm a 2016 Venture for America Fellow. I'm from New York City originally. I went to school in Western Massachusetts. I went to Amherst College, where I studied political science. I was a Baltimore Fellow. I worked for a transportation software startup called Transit Screen. And then with another Baltimore Fellow, my friend Evan Freed, we became fellow founders and started our own company, Diop, and we make some really cool clothes, which I'm wearing right now.
Yay, hopefully, well, turn off the screen share so that Mapate can show off the clothes that he makes. But before we do that, I'm gonna go through a few things, including what is Venture for America. I'm gonna go through a quick overview about all the things that we do. And then I have some questions from Mapate, and that's when I'll turn off my screen. And then we'll end with Q&A so that you can all ask any questions that you have about the fellowship experience, the application, anything that's on your mind. So the first thing, I really want to start off with our mission. So VFA's mission is to create economic opportunities in American cities by mobilizing the next generation of entrepreneurs, that being potentially you, by equipping you with the skills, resources, connections, and much more that you need to create jobs. At the core of what we do is connecting our fellows with startup companies in 14 cities. So as you probably know, we don't match fellows with companies in cities like New York or San Francisco, which are big, booming startup hubs. What we really do is we connect our fellows to these 14 cities, mostly in the Northeast, Midwest, and Southeast, so that you can continue to grow the entrepreneurial ecosystems in these cities and contribute to growing startups while building the skills that you need to be startup leaders and founders one day. And then when our fellows are ready, we provide them with the resources, skills, et cetera, that they need, like Mapate, to help them launch their own companies as well. So I want to give a quick at-a-glance view of the program, starting with the match process. So if you were to become a fellow, upon accepting the offer, we would start to onboard you and prepare you to start to do the startup job search by reviewing your resume, by helping you with your interviewing skills, by giving you the resources that you need to be really successful in the match process. And the match process will officially launch in April of 2020, and it's an intensive job search where you will be looking for a good fit in terms of one of our company partners that we've sourced in one of our 14 cities. They'll have access to an exclusive job portal where you'll be able to apply for these different roles Venture for America, and this is important to remember, we don't place you at a company, and nor do we tell a company that we think someone is great and they should hire them. What really happens is you get to drive your own search process for a really great fit based on your interests, skills, and experiences, and based on a company's experiences and the opportunity that they're providing for you as well. So you can apply for jobs at one of our more than 250 company partners across our 14 cities. And this happens for most fellows between the months of April to June. In July is when you would come to training camp in Detroit. And training camp is a month-long experience where you not only get to build professional skills that are hard and soft, and work in challenge teams where you're learning how to ideate business ideas and also pitching them, but you also get to build a community with other people who are really interested in starting companies, becoming startup leaders for reasons bigger than themselves, people who are high integrity, high character, people who are just action-oriented and want to help build entrepreneurial ecosystems and companies in the cities that we're in. After training camp, most fellows are moving to their new cities in August or early September to start the actual 2 years of the fellowship. So during these 2 years, you will work at a startup for that length of time and continue to get professional development and support from Venture for America. I know I got some questions before this about mentorship and all these things, and that's what happens during the fellowship. We can connect you with industry experts, connect you with people who've started a company, and also connect you with other fellows who have been working in certain industries or roles for a variety of years. And we can dive more into fellowship and professional development opportunities in this call as well. And then after the fellowship, we also continue to support our fellows. So if a fellow has an idea for a company, then they can join our accelerator program, which Mapate has done, and I hope can share more about that as well, to start their own company and be successful at it. 16% of our fellows are currently working at full-time on their own companies, and about 60% of fellows currently work at a startup, either an early, mid, or late stage company. And then about 12% of them, I believe, are working for a larger tech company like Google, Amazon, or Facebook. So this is sort of the programmatic land. Again, we can dive into more of these later on, but just wanted to get everyone on the same page about what VFA does for our fellowship program and our fellows. So I also wanted to walk through the application process. So if you've already done this, you've done the activity section, that's why you're on this call. Congrats on making it to the online essay stage where you're going to be writing about why you want to be in VFA, sort of giving a pitch for yourself about what makes you a good contributor to a startup. And if you make it from the essay stage, you will do a video interview with a VFA team member, alum, or one of our fellows. And that's a chance for us to get to know you better in terms of your goals, your motivations, sort of things that you're concerned about potentially with VFA, so that we can get to know you beyond just what you write to us on a piece of paper. And then finally, if you move on from the video interview, you'll be able to be invited to Selection Day, which is our fourth and final round. That will happen in either New York City or one of our 14 cities. Since you've all applied for a fresh deadline, our first Selection Day is going to be on Friday, October 11th in New York. And during Selection Day, you'll participate in a series of group activities and an individual interview as well. So for the purposes of today, we really want to focus on the online essay. And this call is really geared to help you be successful in writing an essay by sharing with you more about what it means to be a VFA fellow, the experience, and what people do afterwards as well. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to do a panel. I have some questions prepared for both Daisy and Mapate. So they should be ready for these questions because I gave them to them ahead of time, and you all know these questions as well if you're on this call. And the first one is that how did you actually find your job through Venture for America? What was your match process like?
I can tackle this one first. So I was in the final selection day, and I was in the same class as Winston in 2016. That was when I graduated from college. And so the last selection day that year was in the third week of March. So by then, match had already been open 3 weeks. So I just jumped right in, looked at a lot of different companies and a lot of different cities. I wasn't someone who chose which companies I reached out to by match based on by city or role or anything. Coming from a liberal arts background, I just wanted something that my main priority was being able to go to a startup, go to an organization in which I could learn a lot. and be exposed to new things and get out of my comfort zone. So just whatever interested me is how I went out and connected with a lot of different companies. And then from there, I started talking to a lot of different companies in a lot of different cities and had sort of initial interviews, a few work tests here and there, in which they send you a piece of work, or they send you questions or things to think about, and you send it back to them. And then I would do a couple of on-site interviews in some VFA cities when we got further along the process. In particular, went out to Cleveland and went out to Columbus, and those were really fun. I was really fortunate to get an offer from an education consultancy down in New Orleans that I was really excited about. But then when I got I had accepted the offer from them and was ready to be onboarded. But then when training camp came around, because the consultancy was a nonprofit, they had received a grant from one of their donors that would take the entire company out of the country. So they weren't there to onboard me, and they recommended that I go look for a new job. So I left training camp without a job and kind of went back into the match process. But I was really fortunate that a lot of the work I'd done earlier in the spring had paid off with Match, and one of the co-working spaces in Baltimore which is connected to a series of other co-working spaces on the East Coast and also the University of Maryland, had a really quickly growing software company that was looking for people to grow out its business development team. And I was able to join them later on. I started out first remotely in September, and I was able to join them in October. And that was my Match experience.
Thanks for sharing, Mapate. Yeah, and the Match experience is intensive. Things can happen, and VFA is there to support fellows if and when things happen during the match process as well. Nowadays, we have community directors in all of our cities that sort of work to communicate with company partners and are able to oftentimes make direct connections to fellows who are having an experience that Mapate might have had where things might have gone a little bit awry. So that's challenging, but one of the good things about VFA too is that we can support fellows if something like that does happen. What about you, Daisy?
Yeah, I'll jump in about my match process is a little bit simpler. I also joined, so I'm a 2018 fellow. I also joined the last selection day, which that year meant that Match, I joined, I had my selection day Friday, I got the offer, and Match hadn't been open about a week by the time I had accepted and gone on. So I had graduated a semester early, so from college, so I wasn't working full-time or in school, so I was very, very motivated to get a job as quickly as possible. I wasn't super particular about city or role. I knew I joined VFA to do something really different. I knew my background was in finance and research, and I was like, I want big companies, and so I was like, I want the tiniest company in the most sort of far, and I went to school in New York, so in the most far away place. So I was like, not Philadelphia, that's too close to New York. So, and I'm from the South, I'm from North Carolina, so I was like, I want to move to a southern city. So I looked really intensively at Birmingham and New Orleans, and Birmingham had biased because I love Birmingham. The opportunities in Birmingham are amazing. We're one of the best VFA cities if you guys get into VFA, I'm just saying. But I actually ended up talking to a bunch of companies here. I actually talked to almost every company on Match in Birmingham. And I think I pitched almost every company on Match in New Orleans because I was really passionate about moving to one of those cities. And yeah, I ended up coming here for my on-site, had a great time, met with the person where I work now at Alabama Capital Network. It's a one-person company. It's just me and my founder. And I was really excited about that opportunity to work with just one other person. I was super excited about the autonomy that gave. Birmingham is a really young city with a really young startup scene. So that kind of opportunity you just can't get anywhere else. I never would have found this job. And it was actually my first on-site, and the first offer I got, it was Alabama Capital Network, and I was like, I'm taking it. That was probably, I got it May 5th, so pretty early on in Match, but for me, I knew it's what I wanted. I wanted to be a small company. I wanted to be at a smaller city that has a lot of growth potential, and I wanted that autonomy and that independence to pursue the kinds of projects that I want, and that really worked out well for me, really well so far.
Thanks, Daisy. Yeah, it sounds like a very common experience for fellows in terms of wanting autonomy and sort of ownership of a lot of things. That's what startups will do. There's going to be fewer people, and you're just going to have a lot of opportunities for ownership over a lot of things at a company. So I think that segues really well into the next question, which is what the two of you actually do on a day-to-day basis at your startups, or for you, Mapate, the company that you're working on building. What do you do at your company, and also what does your company do, and what problem is it working on?
I can start with that. So I actually we're sort of a startup of startups. We are a angel investment group. We have members who pay us an annual membership fee to receive information about startup investment deals here in Birmingham. But we actually do a lot more than that. We're also a community and economic development organization, basically doing any type of work that we can that promotes the growth of startups and small and tech companies here in Alabama. We mostly in Birmingham, but we're actually a statewide focus. So what that means day to day is I meet with entrepreneurs. They pitch their companies to me. I look over their pitch decks. I do market research. I evaluate their financials. I determine if we think this would be a good fit for our membership. We think it's a good investment. And then we select companies. We disseminate information to our members through newsletters and also through quarterly membership meetings. Today, actually, we're having a pitch workshop for a set of entrepreneurs who we're pitching to our investor network. So they're in there right now with a director of a theater company working on their elevator pitches and their pitch decks and being able to best explain their company. So it's a lot of coaching entrepreneurs. It's a lot of vetting companies and vetting and doing research on their markets. And then I also, at my job, have had the opportunity to spearhead a project that I myself was interested in, that I've been doing in collaboration with two other economic development organizations here, one being a university and then one being it's like our Chamber of Commerce. We've created an ecosystem mapping website to help entrepreneurs in general navigate the ecosystem. And that's been a great opportunity because that was just a need that I saw in Birmingham. I was like, we don't have any website that tells you what resources are available. Most other cities have this type of thing. Someone needs to make it. And then everyone was like, well, you should just make it. So I learned how to use Wix and I made the website. And that's been a really great opportunity to have a project that's completely my own idea. My boss is completely supportive of it, but I have full ownership over it. So that's been an awesome project to be working on as well.
That's awesome. I didn't know that you were working on that. I also didn't know that Birmingham didn't have anything like that. So it's cool that you get to contribute to the ecosystem in that way as well.
Sometimes it's good to be behind a little bit because then you can see what all the other cities do and say, we can do better. We can learn from you and we can catch up and get ahead at the same time.
Yeah, copy and paste and adapt it to the local context. I think that makes a lot of sense. What about you, Mapate?
Sure. I can talk about both my fellowship and what I do now, because what I do now is a combination of things I learned during the fellowship and also things I learned on my job. So I was a business development representative for Transit Screen. They were a software company that designed mobile applications for people to get around. This was primarily in the fields of real estate, but also retail, medicine. They would build custom software for people who needed to get to and from buildings, to and from events, and things like that, of all of your transportation options in one place. So everything from the bus and the train in your city to Uber and Lyft and Via and all of those things, and present it all on one menu so you could decide how best to get around. I was very fortunate when I joined that the company was 2 years old and already had 300 customers and was profitable. This was still pre-Series A, so they hadn't yet raised any money. So it wasn't one of those things where I was jumping right into a company that had, 2, 3, or 4 people, and they were still trying to validate and figure things out. I was employee number 13, and they were at the sort of unsexy part of startups, which is growing the business, which can be slow and take a lot of time. And that was primarily my job. So it was talking to existing customers, seeing what they liked, seeing what they didn't like, seeing what we should do more of, seeing what we should do less of, and then using that to qualify new customers. Should we go after more people in real estate, or should we go after corporations? Should we break it up by territory? And because we were still a startup, I was the first business development representative. So I was also responsible for coming up with the hiring criteria for new business development representatives and new salespeople, and coming up with that playbook. How do we position the product? How do we talk about our product? What is our brand? How do people who know us talk to people who don't know us? What do we think about all those things? And that's the one thing that's very unique to startup experiences. Is in most other companies, I'm sure a lot of people on the call, if they don't have any other work experience or have done internships before, typically when you have a problem, you can call your IT department, or you can call accounting or whomever. At your startup, you are the IT department. You are accounting. You not only have to diagnose your own problems, but solve them. And not just say, how should we go about things, but because your company is small or your organization is small, you take a step back even further and say, how could we do things? And the reason I stress these is because today, as a fellow founder, Just to give you a little background, Diop, we make diaspora-inspired clothing from the African diaspora, which is to say we take wax-printed fabric, we import it, and we make shirts, bandanas, and as of 2 weeks ago, shorts. And so it's me, my co-founder Evan, and our 2 interns. And so our day is anything, and our day is everything from shipping and fulfilling orders and managing returns to talking to customers and, like I said, getting feedback from them, to marketing, to accounting, to legal stuff, intellectual property. It's all of the things that I do. I did at my startup, figuring out how to grow my business now that VFA helped us get started. But then also things I learned during VFA. I still use tools and tricks that I learned both at training camp and at my job, and I still use resources that VFA provides to fellows to grow my business and figure out how to reach the next level.
Cool. Mapate, could you share more about those specific resources and more about the accelerator as well? I think a lot of people on the call potentially who want to start something one day and maybe not immediately after the fellowship or maybe not in like the year or two after, but like what are some of the things that VFA like helped you do it with, and what are some of the resources that are available for fellows of all years?
Sure. So in order to most ably tell that story, I'm going to take us all the way back to the days of 2012. And this was fall. It was when I just got to college. And the reason that's important is because when I started in college, working in startups wasn't really a thing. We were still coming out of the recession and people graduating were still sort of going into typical businesses. I found out about VFA my freshman year because I was on a service trip. There was a senior in my class who had to leave his service trip early to go to his selection day, and he kind of sat down and explained what Venture for America was, and this person ended up in the first Venture for America class. But VFA was something very different and very new, and the idea that you could come out of college or out of your first job and go work at a small enterprise and really build it from the ground up was very novel. So fast forward to when I joined VFA, I didn't consider myself to be an entrepreneur. I was a political science major. I thought I would go into journalism or law, and I just wanted to sort of keep learning things. And it wasn't until I was around other fellows and around some of the things that we did in Baltimore. So for example, every Monday we did entrepreneurship ideation sessions, which is basically VFA would pay for us to get a bunch of Chick-fil-A and sit around for 2 hours and come up with ideas. And that's how people would generate side projects, some of which are actually businesses today. And then there were also other things VFA did, like validation challenges, or SPAT, which is side project-a-thon, which is things people come up with in their spare time to solve problems or solve challenges that are maybe at their job or in their community, and award them money so that they can build prototypes or they can think around it and do things like that. Evan, my co-founder, and I got started because we were a year into Venture for America, and I was wearing one of these shirts, and he said, "Hey, where'd you get that from?" And I explained that it was custom, but making it took a lot of time and a lot of money, and he said, "Why couldn't we do that ourselves?" And so we spent 6 months building a lot of prototypes. It was a side hustle. We did it in our spare time, and we were fortunate that through the VFA Innovation Challenge, which is a crowdfunding competition that VFA partners with Indiegogo to do every March. We were fortunate we were able to raise about $20,000 in 6 weeks. And that helped validate our business, not just because it gave us the money and the startup capital to get going, but also because about half the people who contributed to our campaign bought our stuff. So this allowed us to actually learn how to start making clothes, learn how to start marketing clothes, how to start the very fundamentals of our business. That's what it allowed us to do. And we were so lucky to raise that money that VFA came to us and said, "Hey, would you like to join the accelerator?" VFA runs an accelerator for VFA alumni who are interested in starting their own businesses after 2 years, held in Detroit. And we were able to join, and being in a cohort with other people in our class and other VFA fellows, seeing them work on their businesses and being able to work together and also use the VFA network and use the mentorship and the skills training to really figure out, how do we build a viable business? How do we build a business that's sustainable? How do we do a bunch of things we don't know how to do? And that was the key. That was basically the key to the whole thing. Is we basically spent 4 months doing nothing but full time, just figuring out our business, and we were able to move on from there. And I was very fortunate to visit the accelerator this year in Cleveland, and it's remarkable because fellows are constantly working on projects, but they're even further along now, and we're seeing people further and further up the pipeline who have ideas that either ideas they want to turn into products or products they want to turn into businesses. And that could be you too. You might have one of those too. And VFA definitely has the resources and the opportunities to kind of help you take the steps to do that in whatever way you feel comfortable doing.
Thanks, Mapate. I really appreciate you sharing about that. Daisy, you were at Redux this past summer in Detroit. Were you a participant in Side Project-a-thon at all?
I was, yeah. I participated on, I didn't pitch my own idea, but I did participate on another person's team. I was with Amy Young, and her idea is a bookshelf that's also a moving box. So the whole thing was that you just have all your books in the bookshelf, and then when you want to move, you just take these sides out of the bottom, and all of a sudden you have a box and you can just move your books like that. It was very fun. We spent the weekend validating the idea and doing customer discovery and talking to people around campus, like what are your biggest pain points when moving? What are the biggest factors to with moving? How many times have you moved? And everyone was like, oh, moving is the worst. So we sort of got validated as people wanted. And then we spent some time building some mock-ups out of cardboard and testing them out, which was really, really fun, and making a pitch deck to be able to have Amy pitch it at the Side Project-a-thon finals. So that was a really great experience. I know Techstars came this time, which was great. We did sort of the Techstars Startup Weekend format, which I had participated in a Techstars Startup Weekend in Mobile before, and it's a really awesome format where you go from just an idea to sort of a viable company with an MVP product in just 48 hours or a weekend. So it's a really awesome opportunity to sort of get your mind going and figure out. And I really enjoyed the process, since I don't work in a startup. I work with startups in my everyday job. So it's really fun to be on the other side. I see people's pitch decks all the time and critique them and try to help them make their businesses better. But it's definitely different when you have that opportunity to say, if this was my company, how would I do it? And how would I use the knowledge that I've learned at my VFA job if I was to start a company someday?
That's awesome. What's happened with the project now? Is Amy still working on it?
Yeah, Amy's still working on it. She wants to build a run of about 20 or 30 of them, just in a makerspace, in a wood shop, nothing that would be scalable at this point, and test them out and see. We ran into some kind of significant problems with cost. It's really interesting, making a physical product. I mean, materials just cost a certain amount of money. It's not like a software product where once it's built, you can just scale it and sell it. A physical product has a lot of really interesting challenges. So yeah, she's definitely working on it still. I don't know if it's going to ever get past sort of an artisan business, but either way, it's a really awesome thing. It was really just a great thing to work on. And I think a physical product business are really interesting. So hopefully she'll have some for sale, at least to the VFA community.
Oh, that would be great. Moving is such a pain. That's awesome. I love that, it's a chance to sort of validate ideas and see if they're viable before actually going down the path of starting something, which is intensive. So I'd love to just hear more about your fellowship experiences in general as well. So I'd love to hear about sort of highlights of the fellowship that you've had so far in the past year or so, Daisy. And then for you, Mapate, feel free to talk about the tiers that we shared in fellowship or even now as alums. And then we'd also love to hear about anything that was unexpected or challenging as well, because as we all know, startups, entrepreneurship is not the easiest thing. It's pretty challenging. People go through stuff that requires a lot of resilience and grit. So we'd love to hear some of the challenges that you might have faced as well. So we'd love to hear highlights and then challenges or anything unexpected.
Awesome. I'll start with some of that. So I think my VFA experience has really been amazing so far. Birmingham we have an awesome VFA community, and I think in general, the VFA community is the highlight of the experience. Getting to know all the people in my class at training camp, and everyone has such interesting backgrounds and doing such great things. And then being in Birmingham, being a part of the community here, it's awesome to move to a new place and have a support system, and that's just amazing. So a lot of my highlights are the activities that we do as a fellowship together. We go to a tailgate at University of Alabama. That's always a fun time. We have our welcome weekend. So those sort of social aspects are a huge highlight of the fellowship, and really, really important, especially when you're moving to a new place, starting a new job, and in an environment where, for me, I don't have any coworkers, just my boss and me. So the VFA community has been absolutely critical to my experience, because it gives me someone, both people in my class and older, to talk to about what it's like to work in a startup, to talk about what it's like to have a job, to work on skills I need to work on, to sort of crowdsource expertise for myself. So the VFA community is by far the highlight. And then at my job, one of the huge things that I love about my job is the opportunity to meet with people in the community. I have been able to establish such an extensive network in Birmingham in 1 year. And I think that without Venture for America, that would not have been possible. It gave me the tools in terms of, I think, the confidence to know that like I have the ability to start something myself, to go out and if I want to get something done, just to do it. And then, you know, in Birmingham, especially Venture for America, has a wonderful reputation, and people, it really gives you the opportunity. People listen to what you say, which is so cool. I think as someone right out of college, to be given the opportunity to just voice your opinions and pursue things that you want. So I will say that and being able to sort of start a project myself something that I wanted to work on has been another highlight that I would not have had that opportunity otherwise. Some of the challenges, working at a other person company is very, very difficult. I think you don't have people to bounce ideas off of. You have to really make an effort to go out there and find someone. It's very unstructured. You know, if I want to learn something, I will figure out the way to learn it myself. My days, the time management, completely up to me. I can spend my days pretty much however I want. The first couple months I was here, my boss would take me to every single meeting with her, and she would sort of be like, you should work on this, you should work on this. And about 45 days into the job, she was like, okay, do what you need to do. And at that point, you know, there was definitely an adjustment period where I was like, what do I do here? Like, what am I supposed to do? And so that aspect of it is, you know, no one knows how to achieve, how to grow your company or how to achieve the goal of making there be better startups in Birmingham. So it's up to me to figure out that and work on that along with community partners and to figure out who can help me on that path. So that's been a big challenge, but a year in, I feel great about that. I'm very, very pleased that that's been a challenge that I've been able to work through, and I think will continue to be, will make my job interesting and always be good. But yeah, I think that the fellow community is, for me, the highlight of the VFA experience and the access and the opportunity that it has provided me that I wouldn't have otherwise. And then the challenges are that startups are you don't know what they're doing. You have to just be flexible. You know, sometimes that means working late. Sometimes that means not really having that much work for a week. It's both exist, and just being flexible and understanding that it's about independence and self-sufficiency and motivating yourself, and no one's going to crack the whip on you. So
thanks, Daisy. Appreciate that.
To echo everything Daisy said, my experience has just been phenomenal. And yeah, the best part of VFA is the community. When I was joining VFA, I talked a lot about how I was dissatisfied with some of the other options of things I could be doing coming out of college, and that I wasn't really interested in a lot of traditional paths. But what really set VFA apart from other things was really the people. So being able to, and it's true, a lot of fellows end up moving to cities they've never been before or places they've never been before, but you move there with a group of people who in a lot of cases you either live or work with, who kind of understand where you're coming from both personally and professionally. So everything from sort of like how to do certain things at your job, to figuring out how to learn certain skills, even to just the very natural, because you're at a transition point in your life if you're coming out of college or if you're moving to a new place. Even something as different, even something as soft as, you know, learning to resolve disputes with your roommate. I know VFA fellows, a lot of them buy houses in places they live. When you come into the community, there's a community manager and there's older fellows and there's other people who've gone through what you've gone through, and they can give you a lot of wisdom and like a lot of guidance on how to manage that transition. And that connection with other fellows really starts at training camp. That's really where you not only sort of build camaraderie with the class and you get to meet everyone else in your cohort, but it also sort of reorients your thinking around the types of challenges you're going to be tackling, the kind of problems you're going to be solving. Really that idea of like moving from like a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. So that being not sort of like looking at things as they are, but seeing things how they could be, which is really essential, not just to your job, but like Daisy said, also to just the resilience you're going to need to work at a startup, build a startup, build a business, work at organizations that really want to make an impact. Because like Winston said, just working at a startup isn't easy. A lot of them, some of them go under or they get acquired, or they have to completely pivot the business. And that really does involve just kind of getting up every day and like really betting on yourself and trusting that you're going to be the person to like go and get that thing done. And it very much continues you, and it's something that you carry with you throughout your working and professional life, whether you stay at your startup or move to another company, or even if you start your own business. I've been talking to I talked to other VFA fellows pretty much every day for the last 3 years. Just today, I was on the phone with another VFA fellow founder who is sort of reworking his product, and he was in my cohort because we're still, even though I'm not working at a startup and I kind of have my own startup, I still work with a VFA fellow. I still work with other VFA fellows. We're all working on similar types of problems and challenges. And there are fellows older than me and fellows younger than me that like learn from that, and I learn from them too. And so that's what makes the challenging parts of being at a startup. Perhaps it's the uncertainty of how the business is going to do. Perhaps it is the uncertainty of moving to a new city or doing something I've never done before. That's really what helps you overcome those challenges. And it really, like I said, it helps you grow as a person.
Thank you, Mapate. Yeah, I think as an alum myself, I definitely resonate with everything that both of you said. Moving to a new city and having roommates, knowing that I could talk to older fellows, and also just like contributing to the community ourselves as people who are older. That we have a little more than 1,000 fellows and alum at this point in the community, and it's growing. Some of you will be part of our class of 2020, and we're really excited to like welcome you to the community if that's the case, and for you to be a part of investing in the community as well, because it's only as strong as what me, Daisy, and Mapate invest in it. So it is definitely something that is like a key part of the fellowship experience. That being said, I know that I wanted to reserve a lot of time for Q&A. I did have one other question for you all, but I'm assuming that it'll get answered with some of the Q&A from some of our participants on this call tonight. So I would love to turn it over to everyone on the call. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question, or put them in the chat either for everyone to see, or if it's a question that you'd rather like me answer directly to you, feel free to just DM me or send me an email afterwards. You all should have my email address. So really just want to turn it over to you. Again, like I would say most questions about the fellowship experience are fair game. Feel free to ask questions. If it's something that we can't answer, then we will tell you that we can answer. But would love for all of you to be able to get your questions answered as well. And then if there's a lull, I have a bank of questions that people who weren't able to make it on the call ask. So I will ask those questions as well. So feel free to unmute yourself or put those questions in the chat.
Winston, should we start with the ones in the chat box, or are they just going to?
Yeah, I was going to see if anyone wanted to unmute themselves first, but wanted to wait for that. But we'll just go ahead and start with Cindy Gao's question, which is, I was wondering what you wrote in your personal statements when applying for Venture for America. Keeping in mind, I think the application has changed a little bit since we applied Mapate and I think Daisy, but like if you wanted to touch very briefly on like things that you talked about, that would be super helpful.
I don't remember exactly. It was a long time ago, but I mean, much longer for YouTube, but for me also. But I know I definitely wrote about my desire to be because I know it's like the sort of why VFA and why startups. I'm not sure if that's the question they still ask it. I think so. So I know So I definitely wrote about wanting to have an impact on the cities that I moved to. That was really, really important to me. I wanted to be able to move somewhere where the work that I was doing would make significant change for people and companies in that city. Living in New York and working at big companies, I felt like it was like really, you just like lost among the shuffle and you don't really get to see the impact of your work. So that was super important to me. I wrote a lot about impacting the community I worked in and impacting the startup or the company that I worked for and being able to see the positive effect of my contribution there. And then I also wrote about really wanting that sort of unusual opportunity. Like I wanted VFA to give me an opportunity that I wouldn't have found otherwise, and something that was a little bit more risky, because I felt like at this point in my life I could do that, and that would be I could be successful at it. So
thanks.
Yeah, I also it's been 4 years now since I wrote that personal statement. But if I had to guess, it was very much the tenor of what I've told you so far. Was just wanting to do something different than was available, and really challenge myself and get out of my comfort zone, but also be able to contribute to a community and join a network of people that was working on a lot of different sorts of problems. And that was exactly what I got, and that was exactly what I found from day one, from when I arrived at training camp. Was people really thinking differently, because there's every kind of, one of the great things about BFA is there's every kind of business, there's every kind of organization. We tend to think of startups as being tech or technology focused or technology enabled, or that you just have to be an engineer or a coder or a developer. But you'll see that there are growing and new businesses in every industry, in every field, in every city, that are in need of people who have your skills and your background and your experience to tackle those issues.
Thanks, Mapate. And to just add a little bit more for this answer for this question, I would say that we really want to know what you think and why you want to be a fellow. So I'm glad Daisy and Mapate shared, but really want to know who you are authentically, because there's so many reasons why someone would want to be in BFA. There's so many reasons and so many things that you can get and give through the fellowship program. And we want to know what's important to you. If all those things are resonant to you, then include that. But we don't want to be in a position where we're telling you what's right, because at the end of the day, we want you to be authentic, because that's going to be able to, for us to understand if you're going to be able to thrive as a fellow, and for you to evaluate us as an opportunity for what you plan to do in your future as well. So I encourage you to take in what Daisy and Mapate said, but remember to be authentic to who you are and your story. The next question is from Stephanie, and it is, what was your training camp experience like? Specifically, what hard and soft skills did you develop? Yeah, it'd be great if both of you could share sort of like on the professional side of things, what you learned and how you use them today.
I think for me, just to answer this briefly, the biggest value out of training camp for me was learning about startups. Design thinking, lean startup method, pitching, the whole sort of, I had no experience at all working in startups. I didn't know anything about startups. I just joined startups because I was like, that's different from big companies. So I think for me, the language of a startup and the mindset, that was for me the biggest skill that I learned. As far as the hard skills, I mean, the website building, even though I didn't necessarily build a website in WordPress now, I use Wix, but I do that now at my job, and that's even just learning like, oh, that's something that I can do. That was an important hard skill for me. And then, yeah, I think for me, it was so much about what is the startup world? How do startups think? And how can you think like an innovator and like an entrepreneur?
For me, the best hard skill was the design thinking and human-centered design unit. Not just because I do that today, but because thinking about products holistically and thinking about a customer journey and how to design around that is really essential for solving all sorts of problems at a startup. And it really is a hard skill, being able to sort of sit down and come up with research questions, come up with things that you want to measure against so that you can improve on them. And like I said, it's still something that's really essential to the business I run today. On the soft side, simply just being able to work with others. When you go to training camp, you're put in a challenge team, and you work on a bunch of different things together. And even though you might all have different experiences and come from different backgrounds, you're all working towards the same goal. So being able to meet those people, connect with them, give each other feedback, try and figure out the best way of approaching and solving a problem was really essential, because it's the thing you do every day in your startup, is coming together with other like-minded people to try and solve problems.
Sometimes unlike-minded people, and how do you deal with that too? And I would say that everyone's going to be coming from different sort of backgrounds, whether you studied engineering or business or you're liberal arts majors, like I think all three of us were. And what we really want to do is give you the foundations, be able to add value more generally through training camp. So we're not going to teach you everything that you need to know for your specific role, but it's really giving the mindsets of human design centered thinking, how to pitch businesses, how to think through things, how to give and receive feedback that are going to be really valuable and will give you sort of an extra boost in your ability to add value to a startup on day one. And then very personally for me, we had a session on like how to like use Excel shortcuts and how to like navigate Excel documents very quickly. And I use that every single day, and it saves me so much time. And I kind of rolled my eyes at like Excel training, and I was like, I don't really know about this, but it was just so useful for me. Even now today, when I was sending you all sort of like reminders for this webinar, or like that invite, for me to like go through Excel pretty quickly, like such a small thing during training camp, but has really saved me so much time in my life. The next question is from Griffin. If you become a fellow, are you guaranteed a job at one of the BFA startups or company partners? what is the job placement rate? So yeah, I'm happy to answer this question. So like I mentioned earlier, we can't go to a company and say, hey, company in Birmingham, we think Daisy is the most wonderful person ever. She passed our selection process. She's going to be a great value add. Can you hire her? So we as an organization, we cannot ask a company to hire a fellow, which means that we can't guarantee that a fellow will get a job at a startup. We do select fellows based on our understanding, and this is something we look for throughout the entire process, is your ability to contribute. And what that means is, your ability to work well on a team, your ability to adapt to different settings, your ability to learn on the go and add value. And the best way for us to understand that in this process, especially in this phase, is for you to articulate the things that you've done in the past and your achievements and how you did them in your pitch, because that'll allow us to see how you will do that in the match process, but also how you would do that on a day-to-day basis with one of our company partners in your actual job. So I can't say that we guarantee jobs for every fellow, but what I will say is that as long as a fellow is proactive and is asking for support and keeping on with interview process and pitching companies, that we will continue to support you in finding a good fit. I work on the team that onboards and supports fellows through the company partnership and match process. So I know firsthand what it's like, not only as a fellow, but as a company partner who hired fellows and on this side on the VFA team. So we're here to help you and we're here to support fellows as long as they're in the job search. So hopefully that will answer the question.
Winston?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question for both Daisy and Mapate. Hopefully I said that correctly. So where do you see your respective firms going in the next 3 years? Where the future goals for your firm, and how do you think the VFA program really helped you go in that direction?
I'll answer first because mine's pretty short. So mine is we're an angel investment group, and I think in the future for us is starting a fund and starting a venture capital fund and being able to really invest directly in early stage companies. So for me, that can mean that, if we work towards that, then I will have this experience that I have working in the community, and then I will have experience raising a fund, and then I will have experience investing a fund. So that's sort of the direction my company is going, and we're a little different because we're not a revenue-producing company at this point. We're more of an economic development organization, but sort of moving into that model of direct investment and having an opportunity to really learn how to make investment decisions is where I see the future here.
Sure, and the answer, and this is something you're going to hear a lot when you work in startups, is I don't know, but we'll find out. We're very lucky that we have a business that is validated, and I can tell you our vision with the business is to become sustainable, and to become a sustainable, which is to say profitable business that Evan and I continue to work on. We're not venture scale, so we're not gonna have a million customers. We're not gonna sell 1 billion shirts. Could we one day solve some sort of problem that would necessitate working at that scale? Sure. But we're bootstrapped, so the revenue from the business goes right back into the business, and we want to be able to grow sustainably from there and continue to not just put out a product that people like, but also have a brand that really reflects people's lifestyle. And VFA is a direct contributor to that success. VFA not only admitted us to the accelerator, but at the end of the accelerator, they invested in our business. They put about $25,000 into our business, and we're lucky that our goal for the year was to return $50,000, which was the amount of money that was put into it this year, and we're on track to return 75. So there are things that are working, and so it's Evan and I's job is to work with other people to be able to double down and be able to scale that and grow that number and continue to keep doing those things so that we keep on growing.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Great. We have a question that's directly for Mapate and his company. If you could answer this briefly and then connect with Mauro afterwards as well, because we have a lot of questions. I want to make sure that it's applicable to everyone. But the question is, when you started Diop, what kind of social impact did you envision for it? Lastly, were there any points during your fellowship or starting Diop where you had to compromise your values for the company that you started?
Sure, and I was going to say this is a longer conversation, and I can drop my email in there so that we can have a conversation offline. But to briefly, to quickly answer these questions, I did not envision an impact when we started out. To be entirely honest, Evan and I kind of backed into this. When we had the prototypes made in December of 2017, we weren't entirely sure there was a business to be had here. People liked it, but we weren't sure anyone was going to buy it. And if they were going to buy it, what exactly we would charge for it. We were able to collect emails. People give us compliments, but businesses don't run on emails or compliments. And it wasn't until our friend said, hey, you should do the VFA Innovation Challenge to try and validate it and use that to sell the product and see if people would actually put any money towards it. So we kind of backed into a business. But the important thing that VFA taught us was the importance of getting close to that customer, maintaining close relationships with them, doing a lot of discovery, using that human-centered design thinking and a lot of that design thinking that we did during training camp to really get the root of why do people buy, who buys our stuff, where do they spend their time, why do they buy our stuff, why do they keep coming back, and what are the things we can do to answer those questions and also scale them. And then lastly, again, it's just like we really just did not, and we're still surprised every day at just what our customers tell us and the things that this does for people. But we're surprised as anyone that there is a viable business to be had here. And those values really do come from the customer. Those values really do come from the people we talk to. And again, that's just all credit to VFA about going about when you want to build your own business or you want to take your idea to the next level, being able to build those things the right way, and which is to say having a lot of strong fundamentals in place so that you can learn them and you can do them and that you can scale them and grow them responsibly. So I know I've never felt we had to compromise the values because the values very broadly come from our customers and by extension come from VFA.
Thanks, Mapate. And if both of you, no worries if you aren't open to doing this, but feel free to add your email addresses if people want to follow up with you directly. I'm sure that people would love to learn even more about your experiences and your stories. I'm going to move on to some of the other questions. So the next one is, why did you choose to join Venture for America instead of going through the traditional recruitment process in the cities that VFA matches fellows in?
I'll answer this because for me, there was no way I was going to move to Birmingham, Alabama without Venture for America. I lived in New York. I went to college in New York. Like, without VFA, I probably would have stayed in New York, like tried to find a job, done everything I could to find a job in New York. I wanted to move to a new city, and I was like, how do you move to a new city? We don't know anyone. You don't know the jobs that are available. So for me, it was basically, I would never ever have this opportunity without Venture for America. This opportunity would not have been available to me, and I would never have known about it. So I think that, especially for some of the cities that are a little bit smaller or have a little bit newer startup scenes, you just get access to an opportunities that you would never know about without Venture for America. That's my take on it. So maybe for some of the larger cities, that's not necessarily the case. Or if you're from the city, you already have a network there, you might have a different reason for joining VFA, like community. But for me, it was really like literally opening doors to opportunities that I would not have access to otherwise.
And for me, it was like I said, it was the community, and that's really what set it apart. Once you get out of college and the thing I miss most about college, I'll speak for myself here, is just having all of those people in the same place at the same time. You feel very fortunate. And that can be very tough when you come out of college because everyone's working and going on along doing different things. And so being able to move to a new community and invest in it, but also build community in places that you might not have thought of or you might not have been to before is just a really, really valuable experience, and it causes you to grow a lot. And so that was really what drew me versus other places, because I knew I'd learn a lot both personally and professionally, because I really was getting outside of my comfort zone. I really was doing things that I had never done before. I was picking up skills I had never done before. And it really was just exposure to those things and the right sorts of opportunities and like being put in a position to succeed. That was just the real value to VFA, and that was the real draw and appeal versus other things. And it's something that continues just with you as you continue to go on in your professional life. And VFA people are everywhere, working every kind of job, and so they just have so much expertise and experience and knowledge that they share. And it just continues to be useful in all aspects of your life.
Thanks. And I really apologize to Neil for skipping over this question. I sort of glossed over it, but if both of you could share some of your biggest fears about joining Venture for America, either during the application process or when you're considering your offer, that would be really great. Feel free to be real and be truthful with your sort of like lived experiences with VFA as well.
So for me, my biggest fears, well, with VFA in general, I had a fear that I would find a job that I wanted to do that matched my skill set. Even once I was in on math, I was like, oh no, like, am I good enough for these jobs? Like, am I going to get one? Am I going to find one that I want? Is this worth it? So that was a fear, but I mean, there was lots of good opportunities, and I got one that I like. And then in terms of moving to my city, I preach this all the time that people shouldn't have this fear, but I was definitely afraid of Birmingham. I was afraid of moving to Alabama. People have a lot of opinions about it. I was like, oh, is everyone going to be racist? Is everyone going to go to church all the time and I won't fit in or whatever? And so I think that was a big fear for me that I spend a lot of time now trying to convince people not to be afraid of that, because it's been a really wonderful experience, and I've been exposed to so many things that I never would have been exposed to before. And I'm very, very grateful for the different perspectives that living here has given me. So that's something that I was afraid of, but since then I've come to preach that being out of your comfort zone is a good thing, and that if you have a little bit of fear, you have way more opportunity for growth. Sorry to preach that, but.
Apart from just the general fears of when you're graduating from college and will you like the transition that comes with moving to a new place, my biggest fear was just professionally was getting to an organization or getting into a business and it failing. Like Winston says, startups can be very fickle, small businesses can be very fickle. And that's something you go in with the knowledge doing, but being directly responsible for so many things, because you care so much and you work really hard at it, you're worried about, is this thing going to work? Is this going to grow as quickly as it said it's going to do? If you've taken on investment, or depending on the way in which your business works, you're concerned about like, how are we going to, return our investors' money? How are we going to continue to work with these customers? But all of that comes with the territory. A lot of the businesses and the startups I've seen are working on really, really difficult problems. They're trying to find solutions to really difficult problems, overcome a lot of obstacles, overcome a lot of challenges. In a lot of cases, things people have never done before, which is why they exist, and it's a really great thing. But one thing, again, that VFA trains you to do is really to not just to be optimistic, but to be resilient, and that if you're going to fail, you fail quickly, and that you might screw up a lot and make a lot of mistakes, but the places in which you don't make mistakes are the things that you really need to double down on. And those are going to make you're not just your organization successful, but they're also going to make you a successful employee and hopefully make you a better person. So it's really just getting over that fear of failure was like a really, really big challenge. It was a really big hurdle for me.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And, just to share about my experience, the company that I worked at was a Y Combinator-backed company. So it's like a huge accelerator out in the Bay Area, and VFA was one of the, the doorbell rang in my house, was accepted to this accelerator program. And that company failed about a year and a half after me starting at that company. So I was there for a year and a half, and it was hard. I won't sugarcoat how hard it was to be unemployed and to not have a paycheck. Thankfully, I had savings. But what I was really grateful for was that Venture for America supports fellows when this happens to people, and it does happen. Even the most backed companies can fail, which is true outside of VFA as well. And I was grateful to have a community director that I got coffee with. So she helped me identify job opportunities I could apply to. Everyone in our community knew that all of us were looking for jobs because half the company was fellows, and people sent us job descriptions. And I actually was able to decide between 3 different job opportunities within a month and a half. So it's hard, it's challenging, but the thing about VFA is that we help sort of to mitigate the risk. We can't eliminate the risk of startups and entrepreneurship. It's always going to be inherent no matter what you do in this world, but I'm really grateful that VFA had that for me when I was going through the fellowship as well. I want to be sensitive of everyone's time. We have about 2 minutes to 5:30 p.m. Eastern. So if you have to go, there's no harm in leaving. If you have to go to class or whatever, feel free to take off, but I'm available to stay on for a little bit longer if anyone wants to stay on. Daisy and Mapate, same to you. You don't have to stay if you have to run, but there are a few more questions that I would love to get through as well.
Can stay on and answer 1 or 2 more questions.
Perfect. All right, so go ahead.
I said likewise.
Okay, great. And then, so the next question is, as a VFA fellow, do you think you got extra opportunities or responsibilities in your role versus a traditional entry-level employee?
I mean, my answer is just it's just yes. In the instance of time, it's literally just absolutely. I've done so many more things as a VFA fellow that I never would have gotten to do as a regular entry-level employee. So, yeah.
Definitely. Not just the strength of what you know coming out of training camp and like your background and your experiences, but also just the VFA network and the kinds of opportunities and things that come through there. It's like a positive feedback loop. You learn a lot from VFA, and that teaches you a lot, and they want to give you more responsibility. And when you have that more responsibility, you learn even more, and you apply to VFA, and they just both feed into one another.
Yeah, and if that's something that's really important to you, one of the good things about the match process is that you get to evaluate if an opportunity is going to give you that level of autonomy and the responsibility that you want. I mean, you have to get the offer first, but you have the agency to be like, oh, this is way more autonomy than I'm looking for. This is like a Daisy job where it's going to be very unstructured and I have to do a lot of things. Or it's like something like Mapate's position where he was the first one, but he wasn't like the only one, and it would give him the opportunity to like grow in the ways he wanted to. So it's partially up to you based on the opportunities that you're looking for. But for the most part, almost every fellow has an opportunity to like have a lot of responsibility.
I just want to add to that some of my fellow fellows who work at much larger companies and entry-level positions, if the company it has hired fellows before and it's a supporter of VFA, often those people experience significant boosts compared to other entry-level employees, even at their larger companies. So they get a lot of the, and that's something that you have to evaluate personally in the match process. Is this company, is that going to be an opportunity here? But that's something that's great. You get a little bit more security, but you also get a little bit extra autonomy that I think the VFA fellowship can bring, the name and them knowing that this is a really, really, really qualified candidate. So I think that's something that's up to you to evaluate and match, but at all sizes of companies, there's opportunities to do more than an entry-level position as a VFA fellow.
Thanks for adding that, Daisy. That's a great context. All right, what did you think the largest value that VFA was offering before joining the program?
I'll tackle this. Like I said, just being able to go to places that other people don't particularly pay attention to and go and work in interesting challenges that you can have an outsized impact on. There's very few other organizations that allow you to take on so much responsibility and take on so much agency in your own life in these kinds of decisions and be decisive and like go work on solving those problems, and particularly go do it with other like-minded people. And that is something that is still core to the mission, and you can see it in the diversity of not just the people on this call, but of VFA fellows and the kinds of projects that they work on. And that's something that continues to just be a real strong point for VFA.
Great. And how do you measure success in your role as a fellow, whether that be personal or someone else evaluating your performance?
I can answer this. For me, wait, am I muted? Can you hear me? I'm fine.
We can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, my computer is like, your internet connection is unstable, whatever that means. I measure my success by the impact, the outside impact that I see. It's not so much about, for my role, not so much about internal sort of KPIs, but, am I helping entrepreneurs succeed and help them grow their businesses? Which is a little bit vague, it's a little bit qualitative, but I measure it through the relationships that I build and the personal, and then as well as the personal growth and the skills that I obtain through that.
Perfect. Anything to add, Mapate? You have your own company, so
No.
very specific metrics.
It's mostly just sort of the business metrics, and I think what's most important is that before you decide on how to measure it, is that you're the one who defines success, and that's something you learn at every level of the VFA experience. Is how do you want to define success, and then you pick what things are most important to you, and like you measure against those, and you keep moving that way. So it's really the defining success that is really important in my role, and has been a sort of recurring theme of my VFA experience.
Thanks. And then the next question, if you do get accepted, do you have to take a job through the match portal? The question is mostly yes. We do require the company that you get a job with is a startup, that we talk to them, that they allow you to go to training camp for the month of July, and that they are in one of our 14 cities. So there's those are the main things. We take things by case, but the vast majority of fellows find opportunities through the match portal. It's because, rather than sending cold emails to startup opportunities, we source them and they know that you're a fellow. So it makes it 10 times easier to find a job to match. But that being said, there are fellows in the past who have found companies outside of the match portal that we've talked to, and we deem as like fit for like the fellowship experience, and we've set expectations about the fellowship with them, so that it has happened in the past. And if you do become a fellow, that's a conversation that we can have individually as well.
I have to go, but thank you guys, and I'm hopefully answered some questions and you all got a little bit more insight into VFA.
Thank you, Daisy. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm going to continue to stay on until we answer the last question in the chat. So yeah, and I can answer some of the questions on the fellowship experience as well. So the next question, does coaching continue while you're working at a startup? Obviously, we will learn a lot from working at the startup, but is there other fellow-specific training during these 2 years? So I can answer some of these things at a high level, but if Mapate, you want to share sort of like things from your experience, that would be great too. But yeah, so professional development does happen during the 2 years of the fellowship. So much of it is going to be happening on the ground, because our model is you're going to learn how to be an entrepreneur by being next to one or by like actually working in a startup. So that's where the bulk of your professional development will come from. However, we do have sort of learning modules that we put onto a website just for fellows to use. We have every year an experience where we bring all of our fellows back for a reunion and continue to professional development in terms of like founder things, in terms of negotiation, in terms of adding more value to your company. So coaching and professional development does continue. And we also can connect you with mentors based on like roles, industries, et cetera, based on sort of your interest in that as well. So it does continue. Like with most things in VFA, you have to be like proactive and want it and like to make the most of it. We don't just sort of like give you a job or like give you professional development. You really have to like make the most of the things that we're investing in our fellows. Anything you want to add to that, Mapate?
To chime in, fellows are always, we have a lot of resources and Slack channels and things like that. Fellows are always available to help out if you ever have any very specific or very particular questions with almost any part of your job. And for example, I worked a lot in sales and business development. And so I was much of my job was collaborating and talking to lots of other people. And I got a lot of wisdom and a lot of really good advice from other fellows who are in a similar position or have had experience with software or just worked in the industry that I was selling to. And they just always made themselves available to talk to. So fellows also very much help out fellows in that regard. And so it's not just top down, but it's also very lateral. And fellows are always looking for advice and looking for wisdom on how best to do things. Because something, a challenge, a problem you might have, or a challenge or an obstacle you might be trying to overcome, there's very likely someone in your cohort or someone in the fellowship who's done the exact same thing. And so it's really great to have a community that can reach out to and ask for help.
Yeah, I think the community aspect of VFA and those extra resources sort of make up for like a startup's lack of ability, for example, to do like a week-long or a day-long professional development course that like a larger company might do for employees. So it's less structured, but something that we try to like supplement through our program and also through like the community as well. And then the last question I'm seeing in the chat is about VFA's mission or strategic plan that we launched in 2017, how it has affected the selection process, especially the essay section. And to be clear, and we share this document widely as well, but it's our strategic plan from 2017. And that sort of talked about the 3 things that we wanted to see in our organization as a part of our mission. So number 1 is being an on-ramp to entrepreneurship for communities and identities that have been traditionally excluded from entrepreneurship, technology, and innovation. So women, people of color, racial and ethnic minorities, and the things that we do around that are providing like resources and affinity groups for identities like people who identify as women or non-binary, our LGBTQ plus individuals, our Black African American fellows. So that's one thing that we do. It's one of the 3 pillars of that strategic vision. The second one is creating more fellow founders. So Mapate is an example of that, of how we put our resources financially in terms of our personnel to like support people who want to start companies as a core part of our mission. And then the third thing is making an impact in our cities. So making sure that cities are excited about us, both as like in the philanthropic and corporate communities, as well as in the startup ecosystem as well. So those are the 3 things that are mentioned in that strategic vision that everyone is. I encourage you all to read it if you're interested. It doesn't really affect the selection process and the essay session. It does mean that we are on the programmatic things focused on finding people who are going to want to be startup leaders and startup founders one day. So I guess that's one aspect of that is we want people to actually want to do the thing that we say that we're going to do. But it shouldn't have such a huge impact on like our decision outside of like your just mission alignment with our program and what we hope to do and achieve in the world. Hopefully that answers the question. And if you want to continue into the conversation, feel free to let me know. Does anyone have any other questions in the chat right now, or unmute yourself? All right, well, we're gonna close things out. Thank you all for those of you who stayed on for a little bit longer. I know that it's a Thursday afternoon or evening for a lot of people who are tuning in. Really excited for all of you to be advancing to the essay stage of the application process. I'm your point of contact, so if you have any questions, you all should have my email address, so feel free to send me any emails if you have anything. I think Mapate also dropped his email address, mapate@diop.com, for those of you on the phone. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. We're here to support you and make sure you have what you need to be successful in our process. Mapate, do you have any last words for people on the call today?
No, thank you all for making the time to do this. Every year I just ask myself, where does VFA find these people? And this is where, and I never cease to be amazed at the kinds of people who still want to come in and do this thing. And I'm just glad to see the momentum going. But please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I stare at my inbox all day and would love people to talk to. But no, I really, really appreciate it. And Winston, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all so much. And I hope you all have a great rest of your days. Bye, everyone. Take care.